Amy Carlson. Welcome to the Compare to podcast again.
Again. Oh, Heather, I'm so happy to be here, as
Uh,
always.
okay, what I just realized though is you were only on the show one time last year, and that is just inexcusable. So, apologies for that. And I know
Oh,
the audience is like, yes, Heather, that
oh,
was wrong. You needed to have Amy on more last year. So sorry, that was a fail on my
it's
part.
so good. I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited to be back. Actually, it's such a pleasure when I get to come on here. So, actually, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, well, I'm just excited. It's January, and I'm excited that maybe we can have a hope filled conversation
I like that.
for the woman who's like, okay, well, there's actually, I don't want to just limit it to one woman because
Yeah.
we've got lots of different listeners, right? But I know that there's probably some women out there like me who always, every year, took this opportunity to jot down some goals,
Yeah.
right? Here's what I want
Yeah.
from 2026. And for me, every year,
Yeah.
and I would love to say that my first goal was like spiritual growth, and number two was like loving people better, and then number seven was lose weight, but that's not actually the way the goal
Yeah.
list read. It was number
Yeah.
one was lose insert number of pounds here,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it became my purpose for the year. And I've grown in my journey where I don't do that anymore. Right. But I have a feeling, so back to these categories of women, right? I have a feeling there's women listening who still did that, who did that a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago and are like,
Yeah.
yep, got it, check. And then there might be other women who are like, I stopped doing that. Right.
Hmm.
Like I've kind of grown, I've developed more freedom, but now I spend 5 minutes on social media and everyone I know is
Yeah.
taking the shots. They're on GLP-1s. They're shrinking. And now I'm feeling like, I don't know, maybe that should be my goal for the year. Otherwise, I'm going to be the one who's bigger than everyone else. I
Mhm.
don't want to do that. Amy,
Yeah.
give us some hope, give us some perspective, like ground us ground us where we need to be grounded as we start
Yeah.
off this year.
I love that sentence that you started with. That we would have a hope-filled,
Mm.
conversation. And that actually is exactly what we intend to do, is for people to feel hopeful. And just in that, what you just those few sentences, you just like we could unpack 52 things. Because a few things. One, I think it's really natural at the beginning of a new year. It often happens for women at the beginning of the school year as well.
Mhm.
We just sort of have that natural sort of, okay, it's the beginning of something. So, beginning of the school year or beginning of the calendar year, I think it's really natural to reevaluate.
Mhm.
And I think it's really exciting as believers. We would maybe even use that language of examine, where we would just let the Lord search our hearts and know us and really reflect on 2025 and say, God, what are areas of growth, and what are areas that I had anticipated growing in, or really thought last January that I was going to really dive into, and wow, didn't even touch them, didn't even go there. And I think about that verse, without vision, the people perish. So I think what is exciting is I think this is a really natural, um, beautiful thing. And especially for women who can be very project and organized and right. And it can be very helpful in community when you think about a small group, or friendships that are just spiritual friendships. And I think the risk, what I hear you saying, and what I for sure am seeing in my office, and it was certainly, I mean, if you looked back at calendars, I know we've giggled about this before, but my calendars would have this like I would have a big circle, 8 weeks
Mm.
from now, and then be Xing it off every day. The old like Hallmark calendars,
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
we used to get
Yep.
kittens. Maybe they
Yep.
have kittens on. Um,
Lots of
and
kittens.
so
You're right.
and you're just like, wow, I didn't know I liked kittens until they came on my calendar. So I think the risk is, even for women who are walking in ever increasing freedom, that right now, you said it, and just a couple seconds ago, was am I getting left behind? I thought we were all in this together. I thought we had decided collectively as women that we were going to walk in freedom
Right.
and we were going to choose this thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, I think I'm getting left behind.
Right.
This is a lot of anxiety. I'm getting left behind in my weight. Am I doing something wrong? I get that language a lot in my office. Am I doing something wrong? I must be doing something
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And so what a great conversation for you and I have. And I have this story that I always come with my stories to your to your podcast, but I was in a public restroom not so long ago, and I was washing my hands, and these two women ran into each other in the bathroom. I didn't know them, and the younger woman said, "Oh my word, you look so good." And the other woman opened her mouth, and I could tell she was older. And she said, "Oh, thanks, honey. Thanks." She said, "I'm just 3 pounds from my high school weight of 118 pounds. And so I have 3 pounds to go." And I mean, you could imagine what I wanted to do in that moment. I wanted to have an intervention, but instead I just briefly turned around and I could see she was maybe in her 70s. She was maybe in her 70s. And my heart was broken. I walked away. I actually got teary-eyed because I thought, "Oh Lord Jesus, please let me not be in my 70s, right? And let the women that you and I get to talk to not be in our 70s and micromanaging 3 pounds." And first of all, she's held on to a weight from high school. How many years ago was that?
Mm-hmm.
So all I could see was this video montage of all the experiences of her life that she had
Mm-hmm.
missed. And so part of this hopeful conversation is not, what am I going to do to get this thing? It's, what am I going to miss if I choose that?
Right.
So even if you just sat right now with your journal and you thought, okay, I'm super tempted to create a whole project out of my weight in 2026,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm going to start this thing, and oh, it's so tempting. I'm not going to tell anybody because everyone knows I'm trying to do this differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what if you just sat and journaled and just asked the question, what am I going to miss if I invest my time in that?
Mm-hmm.
What parts of my life will suffer if this becomes the priority? And just sit with that for a second. Let that linger and ask those questions, and even do it in collaboration. There's no question you have these amazing podcast listeners that come back time and time again. And many of them probably have started, maybe even know each other, and they could ask those questions together,
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, you got me thinking, and now you're waiting for another question. I'm like, well, I don't know, Amy. I'm still chewing on that.
We're lingering. We're lingering.
Yeah.
I mean, it's and the reality is, I mean, I get a little bit in my spirit. I get a little, right? I get a little in my spirit. And I was in session this week. I asked a client if I had permission to share this. I said, I'm going to share that this week. I said, she said, "Oh, please share it. Please share it." But we've been working together for a couple of years. And again, coming out of the diet culture, probably 20 years, I think, was really, really deeply embedded in the diet culture. And just, she's coming on this calendar year of just unbelievable letting go and sanctification, and letting go of all these things, and being so deliberate about this, I'm going to call it recovery process of letting go of any social media, letting go of even some relationships that were solely built around dieting and those, right? And being so intentional on letting the Lord do that work in her life. So we were actually talking about this new position she'd taken at her church, which she never in a million years would have thought she would have been worked at a church, and all these different things. And I just stopped and I looked at her and I said, "Can you imagine this basket full of fruit that would not be here if your time had been solely invested in what had been invested for the last 20 years, which was perfect eating, the next diet." And by the way, in those 20 years, she never reached that, whatever that magic goal weight was. In 20 years, she never reached it. It was always this, Looney Tune cartoon mirage in the desert that she was chasing. And she and I both got teary-eyed, and she just said, "Oh my word." And so I said, "I just see this tree with all of this fruit." And I said, and I have this visual of you pouring into this one tiny section of your garden for 20 years. And it just never grew. It just never
Mhm.
grew. And when you said, "Okay, I'm done, I'm done," and you let the Lord do all this other stuff, I said, "It's all growing. You have this
Yeah.
flourishing, beautiful
Yeah.
garden that's bearing fruit." And she and I just looked at each other. She goes, she said, "I can see it. This fruit was just stunted. There was no effort, no prayer, no time and attention to these other things." I mean, her life is so full. Her
Mm.
marriage, her relationship with her children. Again, this Thanksgiving, some things that had happened. Both of her children pulled her aside and said, "Mom, we want to affirm the work that you've done. You're not the same person as you were when you were growing
Wow.
up."
Wow.
And she just was teary-eyed, and they just
Yeah.
said, "We see it. We see, and we want it." And we, right? And it's like, why would we sacrifice that?
Right.
Why would we? And we do, right?
Right.
We over year after year, year over year.
Yeah. Well, because the liar is very good
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
telling us that it's not, your life is not going to become more small if you try to chase being small, which is exactly what it will do. But I think his narrative is your life is going to start.
Yes.
Doors are going to fly open.
Mm.
Amazing, wonderful things are going to happen. If you could just spend just a little bit of time, a couple weeks, couple months, working on getting to be small, then whoa, the floodgates of blessings are going to come pouring over you. And we believe it, right?
Yeah.
Or we believe it for like 8 weeks and then we're like, oh, it's not working. And instead of thinking, it's not working because this isn't actually the path I'm supposed to be on. It's not
Yeah.
working because I'm doing something wrong or I'm just not good at this. Or like, and it becomes this self defeating mentality.
Yes.
Right. But I think like, to your client story, it's like, well, it's so true. We have to see that a life lived for weighing my
Yes.
high school weight
Right.
would be a very small life,
Yeah,
a
I
very
like that
self-centered
language.
life.
I
Right.
like that language, actually. I think that actually is really important language, what you just used. This idea that the enemy is always the enemy, right?
Mhm.
And he is good. He's actually really good at what he does. And that mirage and the lie that my life will begin when, in fact, I would, again, journal prompt. Hello, just write in your journal, ladies, women, men, if you're listening, write in your journal. My life will begin when, because that, I just told you she never reached that weight, right? Like never, never, not the one that she really was. She
Mhm.
kept losing weight and all of those things. But my life, and by the way, she's incredible. She's just incredible. And to see, I when she comes on, we are virtual, and when she comes on, I'm like, "You're radiant. You're just absolutely radiant."
Mhm.
She is. She's just absolutely radiant. And I like that language of the mirage or the lie, the expectation is my life will begin or open up. Or, and again, I'm going to clarify, which I always do. This isn't to say that people can't want to lose weight.
Right.
That there's
No.
nothing in anything that I am ever saying that if you're like, what, my body feel, whatever. And again, that can be a whole nother podcast that we talk about. So it isn't that I'm bad for wanting to lose weight, or I'm less spiritual because
Right.
I want to lose weight. No, absolutely not. One of the things though that is happening, and I just, these conversations are in my office again this week, is that is the primary conversation that's happening in church around tables, right? What am I restricting? They wouldn't
Mhm.
use that language, right? But
Mhm.
what diet am I following? But what am I restricting? And also, what am I eating?
Mhm.
I had a client come on and she goes, "I'm so sick of people talking about what they're eating, or so
Mhm.
sick of them saying, oh, I just need to lose a few more pounds, oh, I'm so frustrated." And she said, "Why is that the most important thing
Right.
that is true about us?"
Mhm.
And so having goals around our health, just in
Yeah.
general, or wanting to, oh, I had a labral tear this year,
Mm.
and also had a meniscus tear. So just thumbs up for all that, right? So this last year and a half, I, went in, had the MRIs on both things separately, exciting. And right, I go to the chiro PT, the double doc who's got the whatever, and he's like, okay, we can send you here and you could potentially get surgery for both of these. These are separate conversations. But neither one is a must for surgery. So, but you can do that if you want. And this is how that looks. And this is how it looks if we do pretty aggressive PT. Well, my goal was to repair and to recover from a labral tear and a torn meniscus. I'm not ignoring that health goal. That's not, I'm not vain because I would like to use my shoulder. And guess what? I can actually. I could not get my arm back this way. And now I can. And I could even put it behind my
Yay.
Makes me very excited. Goal accomplished. Goal accomplished. And so it is not weird that we have goals or expectations around our body or even around our eating. We can, right now, fibers coming into the spotlight, which my husband is so sweet. He said, I'm sure you know this already, but I read an article. So sweet. He said that more than protein, they're saying fiber.
Fiber's back.
I think it's so sweet when he gives me nutrition information. I said, you know what, honey, it's true. And I said, one of the things that happens is the poor carb manufacturers, they can't get carbs to come back. But I said, but fiber is a different word.
Right.
And that's going to sell.
Right.
It's going to sell. So I said, and he goes, oh, really? I said, yeah, those poor, people who manufacture carbs are like, for the love of, can the grains come back? Right. And I said, so fiber is another way to say, and he goes, oh, interesting. I said, not that we don't need fiber. I said, but now the fiber is going to take this glorified role,
right.
And we can have that goal. We can say, you know what? I don't need a darn piece of fruit. I'd love to do that. I'd love to, or I'd like to eat more seasonally. I'd love to maybe reduce the amount of travel time my food has to take. Great. Let's eat seasonally. I'd like to make new recipes. I'm always in sessions. We talk about meal planning, because it's so helpful for our mind space when we have an idea of what we're going to cook in the evening. That's not disorder. That's not weird. Right. So these are all lovely things. They don't have to be the number one thing that we're talking about in every circle. Oops. And then they also don't have to be, right, the most important thing I'm doing. They don't have to be the most important thing I'm doing. But it doesn't make us less spiritual because we want to be healthy.
Right. I love that. And I was laughing to myself a little bit because I vividly remember sitting in, it's just like a turning point in my life because I was I don't know if there needs to be a term for it, a food sharer or a food diary sharer or something. Like I was the person who would just casually in conversation with my husband or when he was my fiance, boyfriend, so he would understand that it was okay for me to eat whatever I had ordered. I was the one who would be like, well, I didn't eat anything until noon. And then I just, had a small salad. And so that's why I had to order this, steak and potato and all the things. Like I was that person. And we were at a hotel and it was the hotel breakfast. And I was sitting, so like they were like cocktail, like high tables. And I was sitting kind of pretty close to the person beside me. And I heard her rattle off to her boyfriend, husband, everything she'd eaten yesterday.
Wow.
And it really got me. I was like, that is the craziest conversation to overhear. Like he looked like he couldn't have been more bored. He could have cared less what she had to eat all day yesterday.
I don't even know what you're saying, girl.
Right. And so that was a turning point for me. I was like, wow, I need to stop doing that. That's kind of ridiculous. And of course, like I was doing it to make sure that he knew it was okay for me to eat, right? Because I hadn't eaten too much or all those things. And anyway, I'm kind of taking us off on a tangent here where we're going, but
it kind of makes me want to go back and hug that young because honestly, right? Of course. I mean, again, if you and I could go back and dig up those old, right, food journals and food over and over and over, and the evaluation, the over evaluation. Right. I mean, the over evaluation of whatever. And again, these I know we've had this conversation on here before. I just think it's funny because I'm a little older than you, but when we were in that era, right, fat was the demon, right? I
Right.
mean, when you think about potato chips that had
Oh,
stuff that made you
Olestra.
like Olestra made you have
Yes.
diarrhea, right?
Yes.
Whoa, wow, right? And you think that sounds insane. I mean,
Hmm.
it sounds, and of course, my young sweet clients, they're like, "What are you talking about? Give me an avocado, give me some
Right.
nuts."
Right.
They're just like, "What is that even?" But I use it so often to go, if that sounds insane today, and that was research, quote unquote,
Right.
right? The top
Science.
cardiologists,
Yeah.
science, everything. Okay, so I'm like, let's think about it. Let's think about it. It's always comes back to moderation. In fact,
Right.
I said this to somebody this week. I said, maybe it was my husband. I said my husband, right? That nutrition actually doesn't change. The
Mm.
cultural rules change. So,
Mhm.
how it's been for 50 years, how it's been for 100 years, how it's been for, right, whole foods, variety, right? Just a lot of different, I mean, and again, we're not talking about perfect eating, but the overall kind of science crux is the same. It's
Yeah.
the same. And so, but the food rules change and
Mhm.
the cultural biases change and food industry and what it's pushing and what's being magnified
Right.
changes. And so it's like, wait, if I can recognize, it's not like, I mean, that was all food industry driven, the fat, the no fat. I mean, that
Right.
was all. So it's like,
Well,
yeah,
and even the low carb, I did an episode, it might have even been last year on, there's a book called Low Carb Fraud, but it
oh,
exposes how it wasn't a doctor or a scientist that actually perpetuated the low carb. It was a guy who wrote a book. He was a journalist
yeah,
and he took
yeah,
a study that no one else interpreted the same way.
yes,
He interpreted the study in a particular way to make his point in a
yeah,
book. And now your doctor will prescribe that you be low carb based on the
yeah.
work of a
On a
journalist,
journalist,
right?
that's exactly right. And
Yeah.
honestly, what's interesting too is there's so much siloed research,
Mm.
and people are filling their mind with. Oh, and again, I there's no judgment here. I can understand people who are having, right, there's symptoms and different things, and they're trying to figure stuff out. But there is so much, I'm going to call it pseudo research with pseudo experts that are, and there are a lot of them kind of saying the same thing, so that you start to go, well, this must be accurate, this must be true. And it's unsustainable, actually, so that so many clients come in so burnt out, so exhausted, and so defeated because they feel like, if I cared about my health, I should be able to do this thing. If
Yeah.
I really cared about my health, but I can't, and I don't know why I'm such a, and it's like, well, first of all, it's unsustainable. And it's unrealistic and it's unhelpful. And what looks more moderate and more just like, yeah, this is
Yeah.
totally living. And again, going back to the woman that was 3 pounds away from high school weight, which actually just makes me just want to cry. It's like, how much life did she miss? And
Right.
is she more healthy? By golly, she's in her 70s. Well done.
Mhm.
Right? Well done. You're there. You're there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what did it cost?
What did it
Right.
cost? Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and is food supposed to be this hard? I
Yeah,
mean, I think
that's good.
that's that's really a question that you have to wrestle with because it
Yeah.
does feel like growing up in this culture, it feels like food is supposed to be hard. And food is supposed
Yeah.
to be something that, especially if you're a woman, you spend a lot of time trying to figure out and optimizing you know,
Optimizing.
and
Yeah.
so it's
That's
like, whoa, was it supposed to be this hard? Is this
yeah.
actually supposed to be as big a part of my life as
Yeah.
I've made it?
And it's really really driven by consumerism.
Mm.
Back in our day, let's give them in our day. You would buy a book and you'd read the book, and then maybe there might even be a book club about it,
Mhm.
right? And maybe there were some products, but now you're inundated
Yeah.
24/7. And you and I have had this conversation again. It's probably a different podcast, but a different episode, I should say, on here. But, a couple of years ago, there was a culture, a little bit more of I'm going to say maybe the health at every size and just a lot more body acceptance and body neutrality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with the rise of right shots, there is now a culture of emaciation, and it starts in Hollywood. It's there. It's influencers and so what was once this kind of joyful acceptance that was like, oh, I'm so glad we're headed this direction. All of a sudden, it was like, quick left. We're taking a quick left. I didn't know
Right.
this was possible. I
Right.
was fine going down this road until I knew this was possible.
Right.
Now I don't have to be okay with this body.
Right.
I'm going to take a quick left. And again, the there's no accusation for, I mean, they can be very helpful, very useful. And again, that's could be another episode, but I'm talking about a cultural shift
Mm-hmm.
of emaciation where there is a very, very thin ideal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's who's questioning it. And we've got to ask that question. I have another precious client. Again, all of these I've gotten permission to share, but she, again, different client, come out of many, many, many years of eating disorder, severe anorexia, diet culture, all the things. She's very involved with their church and homeschool co-op. And she said, Amy, I have about one mom friend that eats. She's like, I'm there packing, when I pack my kids a lunch, I pack my lunch. And she said, but these moms aren't eating. And this one mom in particular, that's a pastor's wife. And she said, I've never seen her eat, not one time. And when I say, oh, did you not bring your lunch? Oh, no. And she said, I'm so embarrassed because is there something wrong with me that I'm eating? That's the culture that we're in, that I feel weird
Right.
that I'm
Right.
eating lunch as an adult.
Right. So yeah, because it's back to the high school mean girls. Like
Yeah.
if you're not just drinking a Diet Coke,
Right.
ew, you're
Right.
eating food?
You're eating food. What are you
What?
doing? Right.
Yeah.
And I love her little imagery of her taking her, sandwich out. And she's just like, I'm sorry, is somebody else eating? And it just makes me I want to erupt because I'm like, guys, this is not okay. And by the way, again, anonymous, anywhere in the country it could be, this mama's kiddos, when they go to birthday parties, they're eating and eating because they're not used to having freedom around food. And so there's some evidence that that's actually having an impact on children. And so I think that's the other thing is this whole very, very thin focus, but also over, I like the word optimization that you use, because that's really kind of a buzzword, right? I'm going to optimize my nutrition. I'm going to optimize my health is a very, very siloed, individualistic. And as believers, I'm crucified with Christ. It's no longer who lives, Christ lives in me. The life I live in this body, I now live by faith. Like it is a community effort. And if my eating, whatever this is, impacting my children or spouse or this is something I have to evaluate. It's like if I'm causing it is actually worth evaluating as a believer to go, this is not just impacting me. Who else is this impacting? Right? How do the women feel around me? And I'm not talking about just eating because, I don't want to make them feel good, but I'm saying this is us as women giving each other permission to be human. Oh, what a wonderful opportunity
to meet a basic human need.
And it's like I wouldn't expect you to be, in Minnesota right now, it's freezing where I'm from. I live in Houston. Originally I'm from Minnesota. It would be strange to me if you weren't wearing a coat, but you're like, I don't need a coat. I don't basic human need to be warm, right? No, I can overcome it. I don't have to wear a coat in 30 below. It's like, well, that's weird. It's equally as weird that you don't need to eat, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm remembering a homeschool class I taught, and one of the kids was giving a presentation on their delicious Thanksgiving dinner. And we took questions at the end of every presentation. And a boy raised his hand and said, that sounds really good. Did your mom eat it with you or was she on a diet?
No.
And the little girl giving the presentation was like, yeah, she ate with us.
Oh my
But I was like,
goodness.
oh, wow. Like, and I mean,
Wow.
these kids were little. This was years and years ago. They were little,
Wow.
but he knew moms don't eat with families sometimes.
No, for sure. No, for sure. No. Right. Wow. That makes me think I just did a elementary school presentation, which I probably won't do again, by the way, not my target audience, but I got asked to do it. And I had done a presentation for PE coaches and health coaches, and it was awesome at the beginning of the year in August. Well, then this one coach is so lovely. She just said, will you come do something for a third, fourth, and fifth? And I said, yes. In a moment of weakness, I did. So I had to do a presentation to third graders, then fourth graders, then fifth graders. So like 150 kids at a time in the gym. And I'm like, wow. And this is the PE coach right before. She said third grade's great, fourth grade, fifth grade's terrible. She's like, I thought, oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know that right before. So the fifth graders actually were terrible. And loved it. I was praying on my way there and I was like, Lord, I have no idea how we're doing this. And I just was like, you know what? My goal is that these kids feel seen. So before I started, and when people were filing in, I made sure I went up and down and made eye contact with every kid and said, so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming. Well, we were doing the hunger scale and doing it with fun, balls and these big nets and teaching, hunger and fullness. And this is something you're born with and naturally good at. And what does this feel like? And so, what does it feel like? How do you know when you're hot? Like, oh, and then they're all telling about when they're hot. And how do you know when you're cold? And I said, how do you know when you're hungry? Actually, the dietitian, sweet Mackenzie Young, she was helping me do it. And she said, how do you guys know when you're hungry? And this little girl raised her hand and she said, I don't need to eat when I'm hungry. And she said, oh, I actually, maybe you mean when you're full? Is that what you mean when you're full? And she goes, but how do you feel when you're hungry? And she goes, I just ignore it. I've learned how to ignore it. And here's me, Post-it note, right? Like, make sure I circle back with this. But here, the difference between third grade, who had all these fun ideas, they were just shouting things out about how do you know you're hungry and my tummy and all these things. Fifth grade, she's like, I don't have to eat. And I thought, wow, fifth grade, right? Yeah. And she raised her hand confidently, like,
right. She's proud of that.
Proud of it. Just absolutely not like, I'm going to keep this a secret, but I don't need to eat. That's a really superpower that I don't need to eat in fifth grade.
Yeah, fifth grade. Which then we carry through, right? And then the woman who doesn't eat at the birthday party, it's like, wow, how can we be like you?
Yeah,
wow, teach us your ways, Jedi Master.
Yes, Jedi Master.
I mean, that's really what we do, though.
They're like the ninja of hunger. Like, how did you juke your hunger? It's amazing. Rather than the joy. My brother is flying in as we're recording this, and my sister-in-law, who I adore, and I'm prepping cranberry pear pie, which I love to make. And the tradition of having that when guests come and just a fresh baked pie coming out of the oven with, of course, you have to have vanilla ice cream with that, right? And the joy of that, and what's missed over and over and over, because we would say, I can't have that. Right. I'm not allowed to have that. And so going back to our original question, if I make that my mission for the year, what am I going to miss out on? What things am I going to have to sacrifice in order to make that my mission? What fruit am I not going to tend to in my garden? Because this is the only thing I'm pouring into. Right. I was in church a couple Sundays ago, and we're doing Kingdom Living and Sermon on the Mount, and it was out of Matthew 7. And it was not crux of his sermon, but of course, you know how the Lord does. He does like a little neon sign. It's like, well, whatever. I'm just going to read it out of Matthew 7, starting verse 7. It says, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives. The one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Who among you, if his son asks him for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, who are evil, which I think is kind of funny, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you want others to do for you, you also do the same for them. For this is the law and the prophets. So I'm listening, I'm reading, and how much more just comes out like a neon sign for me. So it's in my church notes, just highlighted big. And I'm writing it all week. How much more? How much more? And I'm asking God, what do you want me to know about this? So at the end of the week, I made both the Lord go read it again. Like, don't miss out the second half of that. How much more? That's where I got stuck. How much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? Mm-hmm. And so I thought, what are we not asking him for?
Right.
And in this context, most of us are asking for weight loss or these certain things. And he's saying, how much more? Right. Like, don't the C.S. Lewis quote, right, of being satisfied with making, mud pies instead of the holiday of the sea, right? It's like, how much more?
Right. Well, because what I really long for, just even thinking about weight loss, my body has changed significantly in perimenopause and probably recovery from eating disorder too. But
yeah,
my real desire is to be loved.
Yeah.
Right. To feel accepted. I love how you went through the class, the third, fourth, fifth graders, to see them. Like, I want to be seen.
Yeah.
Not like seen and like a look at me, but I don't want to be overlooked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that is the more that I
Yes.
think we're taught comes from weight loss.
Yes.
If I could just be thin, then people are going to look. They're going to see me. But I'm afraid what actually then happens is then we get objectified more, right? They're still not seeing us, right?
Amen.
Like then they're just seeing my body, perhaps.
Amen.
But that how much more like we have these desires, these deep desires to feel loved and known and seen.
Yes.
And it's just a trick that weight loss is going to make that more happen.
Yes, I love that you just said that. It is it. It is it. If I'm going to teach hunger and fullness to third, fourth, and fifth graders, and the Lord says, all I'm asking you to do is make eye contact. That's all I'm asking you to do. I don't care if they hear anything else. So 150 times 3 kids, right? Did I get to look in their eyes? And you just said, the more that the mirage is that the weight loss will give us the more. And the truth is that God is saying, it's for you're trying to control what's uncontrollable. God is already pouring it out into who will ask. That's what he says. How much more to those who ask? And so God, I would say, if you want a 2026 goal, let it be to ask.
Yeah.
Let it be to ask God, what are the things in my life that have felt stunted? What are the things in my life that I have overlooked because I've been so preoccupied with my life will start when? That's the other journal prompt, right? So what in my life, God, are you inviting me into? What do you have, Lord? So this sweet client, the one that the fruit is blooming and off the tree and these beautiful fruit, she said, so much changed for me the first time you prayed, what do you have, Lord? And she said, I'd never prayed that way. She said, and so she said, I began praying that. And she said, it opened up a conversation, not a one-way, right? Yeah. And so I love this idea of just bringing before the Lord, what are your goals for me? And if we as believers, if Heather and Amy are sitting together and we've got our journals and we're like, as believing women, we would go, love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor as ourselves. Let us spend 10 minutes and evaluate my life according to just, Lord, examine me and see what needs to shift in 2026, that would begin to explode in me. And then I would ask God, teach me how to do that. I'm stumped. For most of us, it's like, I can know these goals. These seem like really great goals. And then the Lord's like, oh, I have so much more. I have so much more.
Right. Right. Because those goals are just for that little, to go back to your other analogy, those goals are only for that little teeny tiny part of your garden that you've been I don't know, is hoeing a thing,
Overwatering.
tilling, water over watering. Like I am not a gardener, but that,
Yeah.
that little section that you've beat to death,
Beat to death. Beat to death. Yeah.
and there's this whole big field
Yeah. And you
that's
know what?
awaits.
Wouldn't it be fun if your listeners just started like commenting back after this and just said, I spent time with the Lord and this is my
Yeah.
goal. This is my goal. This is something God
Yeah.
gave me. This is my invitation. Wouldn't that be encouraging for them to hear
That'd
what
be
others
amazing.
are hearing from the Lord? What
Yeah.
a cool thing that we're not getting left behind, guys.
Right.
We're recipients of God's
Right.
goodness. He literally, I could sit here and do nothing and just soak in God's
Yeah.
love and his care and his acceptance and his absolutely mind-boggling love that transforms us from who we are to who we're becoming. And it isn't because I'm following a plan. It's
Yeah.
because I'm basking in God's love for me.
Well, even that left behind language, right? Like we all, like I know what that means. I know
Mhm.
how that feels, but it's the wrong race.
Yeah.
If
Yes.
everyone's beating me in that race, I'm in the wrong race.
Yeah. Yeah. Step aside,
Right.
guys. Step aside.
Right. Yeah. Like that's not what it means to run the race with
Yes.
endurance. Right. Although I have had someone argue that with me
Oh,
once.
okay. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, God's kingdom is upside down.
Yeah.
His
Yep.
ways are not our ways. His thoughts
Yeah.
are not our thouts.
Yeah. The upside down
Yeah.
kingdom. Yep. That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, Amy, you've got company coming. Well, any final thoughts as we close up today's episode?
Well, I think my invitation to all of us, me included, will be to just sit before the Lord and ask that question, God, what do you have for 2026? And that I would yield my own agenda,
Mm.
that I would be excited for the how much more, and that we would begin to ask and even share some of those things with friends or spouse, or what is God inviting me to ask him for? Because
Yeah.
wouldn't it be wonderful if we started sharing those things and our testimonies began, this precious woman with the fruit, it's like,
Yeah.
what if our baskets were so full, right?
Yeah.
And so that's my encouragement, my exhortation, not only for people listening, but for you and me too.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, it's the opposite of control, right? I'm going to just do an illustration for the YouTube audience, right? But it's like clinging tightly, controlling it, to like turning and letting my fingers fall open and having a loose grip and and in that it's a symbol of trust. Like, okay, God, I actually need you to show up and show me like what you have for me, give this to me, provide this for me if this is what I need, right? Versus I'm going to control it. I'm going to make it happen. And doing it that way grows our faith, right? The open-handed way, then we grow in faith as we do that versus we stay stunted if our grip is tight. Amy, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're so welcome. This was so much fun.
Yes, it was. And we're not going to make this the only Amy Carlson episode of 2026. That is on my goals list.
Okay, I'll make it on mine too.
And thank you for watching or listening today. I hope something today has helped you stop comparing and start living. Bye-bye.